Hi everybody, nice to meet you all. So the title, what I would like to share today is Seeking the Success of IT Industry in Korea. So just to start the lecture, I would like to introduce myself for your understanding first. So my name is Young Beom Choi. I had worked in ETRI, which is the largest and the biggest research institute in Korea in ICT area. ETRI stands for Electronics Telecommunication Research Institute. So while working in ETRI, I had cooperated with some of the Iranian organizations like a vice presidency office and some the telecom operators. So it's my pleasure to give a presentation for your understanding and to share all that knowledge and experience what we have done so far. So let me start this picture. So the picture what you are seeing is a scene back in 1960. So as you may know, back in 1916 was right after Korean War. Lasted the 3 years between 1950 till 1953. So that means 1860 was one of the poorest and a miserable situation in Korea. This is right after the war that the most prosperous street in Seoul. After 50 years later, this is the same place, exactly the same place what you saw in the last 1960. We have successfully developed our national economy thanks to the IT industry, and that's some knowledge and experience what I'd like to share through this presentation. So just to help you understanding the Korea, the population is 51 million, and as of 2021, there's a number of the rank of population-wise is 28th out of 959 countries, and the land size is 220,000 per square meter, and it's 84th out of 206 countries. It's a quite small country compared to Iran, and also in population-wise, we have a smaller number compared to that of Iran. GDP is 26th ranking, around 34,000 US dollars. Unemployment rate is around 4%. We have official language like in Iran, you have Farsi, and we have our own language, which is different from Chinese and Japanese. And currency, the exchange rate is around $1 is equivalent to 1,500 Korean won. And the corporate tax rate is around 27%, and a personal income tax rate between 15 and 42 depends on the level of the income. Main export the item I could list the machinery, vehicles, ships, medical equipment, chemical, and those are our major product. And our trade partners are China, because China is the most beneficiary country to Korea, and USA, and Vietnam, Hong Kong, Japan, and Australia, India. Those are our major trade partners. Labor force participate rate is almost 70%, which means we have a very high employment rate, and a lot of people, they are involved in labor activity. The slide that shows us that we have a strict 4 seasons: summer, spring, summer, fall, and winter. So this is a beautiful scenery of Korea during the 4 seasons. Just to help your understanding, I would like to introduce the trend the industry's trend happened for the last 40 years. If you see that back in 1955, this is a ranking from 1 to 10, and if you see that the most of prosperous industry back then in 1975 was textile and electronics and the plywood and a ship and some synthetic, something like more focus on labor-focused industries. This is a sorry. This is the major industry in Korea back then. And again, 10 years later, we have some decline of labor-force industry, and then started to see some the value-added industry, like ranking number 7, automobile part, and the textile and shoes. Although their position were high ranking in our industry, but we already have seen that the decline of those industries. 10 years later, 1995, we have more value added in ICT the product. Like ranking number 1 is a semiconductor, ranking 2 was automobile, and ranking 3 was a petrochemical, and ranking 6 was clothing, and 7 was a computer. So as you can see that trend, we have started to see the emergence of ICT product. And more recently, 2019, a lot of ICT-based industry started to our representative industry in our economy. Like the first one is a semiconductor, and automobile, and a petrochemical, and ranking 5 is a flat panel display. So those areas we are leading the world market as the number 1 or number 2 product manufacturers. So to help your understanding, I would like to introduce the world number 1 market share status. So the number 1 is China, of course, as a world manufacturer factory in China is leading the world number 1 market share. This is ranking in manufacturing side only. So ranking 2 is Germany. Ranking 3 is US, and Korea is leading ranking 11th. So considering the size of the population and the size of our territory, the ranking 11th in the manufacturing world market is a remarkable achievement that I could say. So if I analyze the detail, the part where we are leading as a world number 1 market share, the first one is in chemical side. Of course, we have in chemical side, we have a very strong backup ICT industry. And the second leading part is mechanical, and the third one is textile and leather and etc. So you may hear a lot of the famous name like Samsung or Hyundai or SK. Those are the big leading company in Korea. But not only those big companies which are leading the ICT industry, we have some leaders in various fields, such as Celltrion, which is a leading pharmaceutical area, and Coco Holdings. And this is one of the most famous and more competitive the electronic cookers over the world. And Cerazem, which is a home health care. This small but a very strong company is a leading home health care the world market. And also, Goyoung Technology, which is most specialized in SPI, so the pest inspection, they are leading this area, and Hanmi and Kotek, those are very proud in the world number 1 leaders in these areas. So far, a lot of international organizations, they have evaluated Korean, the index competitiveness, and this is a result of what we have got from those international evaluation organizations, such as 2020, our GDP is ranking 10, and GDP per capita is 26, and export is the 7th rank. And IMD World Competitiveness Evaluation, our position is 23, but in detail, science infrastructure and technology infrastructure, we have placed ranking 3rd and 13th position. Now, 2020 WEF Global Competitiveness Index, overall ranking is 13th. And in ICT adaptation, we are leading first position, and macroelectronic stability ranking first, and the innovation capability is also placed as 60th. We could find a lot of success factors how ICT industry has contributed to the development of Korean economy. But this is a very simple summarization of success factors. First one is market competition, and the second is human resources. Third one is government leading the policy and R&D ecosystem. So among the 4 major success factors, today I would like to focus on how government policy has impacted to the development of Korean economy status. So this is a role of success to vitalize the ICT market for the last 40 years. We have we have shared the role among the entities like government, R&D center, industry, and university. So each entity, they have fulfilled their role intensively, how they could vitalize and develop the ICT industry in Korea. First, the government, their role was dedicated to make a policy and regulation and fund for R&D and human resource development. This is a major role of government. And once government set up policy and regulation to develop the ICT industry, they push that policy to the R&D center to drive required research and technologies. And R&D center, they have responsibility to drive research and development and standardization also. As you already aware, since Korea is a small country and we have a very small market inside, so definitely, to develop our ICT industry, export is our first priority. So to export, standardization is essential component we need to consider. So that's why most of R&D center, they have developed, focused on to develop R&D and standardization. And also, university, they have their own roles as to train human resources and basic research also. So from the point of IT industry and government and industry side, they want to have a very short-term research period to drive a commercial viable product. But from the point of a national side, the basic research is very important to foster the competitiveness of research and technology development capability. So that's why university, they are focusing on human resource and basic research, which is a required long term of research period, which is 10 or 15 years length. Industry, they have the responsibility for the commercialization. So their job is to develop the market and product and service. Once based on that research product accomplished from R&D centers and universities. Unlike other countries, our government has formed a very special fund for the development of ICT. We call it Special Fund for ICT. The source was the selling and the granting the frequency license for ICT industries, the services to telecom operators. So for many years, Korean government, they have granted the frequency license to the telecom operators for IT services, and the telecom operators, they pay some frequency license to government. Government has secured that fund, and they have allocated that fund dedicated for the development of ICT industry. So in detail, for the last the 10 years, in detail, the fracture of investment is like this. In ICT R&D, around 38% to 2,000 million US dollars. And human resource is the second most important factor to vitalize the ICT industry, which is account around 80% of this fund. And informatization is 20%, and broadcast infrastructure, R&D infrastructure, and standardization. So this is a detailed activity what the Korean government has invested for the ICT technology development to vitalize the ICT industries. So to lead efficiency of R&D project, this is a simplified R&D the planning procedure. So if you see this one, we have 4 major parts, which is planning, budget, planning. And then first one is the most of a committee will be controlled by president. And under the control of a president, we have a special committee, which is NSTS, like very similar to the vice presidency office in Iran. And each ministries, they are involved in implementation of R&D project. Something like Ministry of Industry, Ministry of Information and Technology, Ministry of Tourism, and some other ministries are involved in planning activity. And in budget-wise, a lot of social research institute and engineering research institute will be involved to determine the budget for the each R&D project. And then also in planning phase, a lot of research institute and the research councils and private companies and universities, and most specialists will be involved to design and to cut up the detailed plan for the R&D system. Once the planning is done, controlled by research institute and private companies and universities, and that project will be selected from most of a competitive procedure, and then the policy maker, government and industry and academy and expert will be involved to finalize the project for the next year or for the longer term project research program. This is in detail, the National Science and Technology Planning Procedure. It's like first one is science and technology level and the trend analysis. This is the step is to analyze what's our position, what's our strength, and what's our weakness, and what is the technology we need to compensate. This is a main focus happening in this science and technology level and trend analysis. And second is a technology level assessment, which is what kind of a technology we are controlling, and what's the level in our technology capability. And third one is the National Standard Science and Technology Classification. We have our own National Standard Science and Technology Classification table, and based on that classification table, we try to reflect our the review and analysis how we could maximize the efficiency of R&D activity. And the last one is science and technology indicator and statistics analysis. In this phase, a lot of statistics information will be added and analyzed how we could impact for the next, the longer and midterm, how the science and technology can develop, in fact, our economic side. So in those four factors, based on those four factors, and a lot of experts will be, will be involved again to do some R&D survey and analysis. That's one track. And the other track is science and technology foresight and roadmap. This is to keep that consistency and some driver force for the longer term as for the R&D activity. So the science and technology foresight and roadmap and the R&D survey and analysis report will be merged as a national R&D priority setting. So a lot of universities and research centers, they could propose a lot of possible R&D projects, and through this procedure, science and technology roadmap and a survey and analysis, in the final, the national R&D priority will be set. And then based on that priority setting, and the government can make a detailed R&D, national R&D master plan, which will last for 5 years. In Korea, we have renew our national R&D master plan every 5 years. So based on that R&D, the master plan, each ministries which are involved in R&D activity, they need to design about their own detailed action plan. This action plan should be proposed and should be designed every year, and the national R&D budget allocation will be done at this stage. And then after that, at the end of the project every year, and the performance review evaluation. The main purpose of this performance review is to decide whether to go or drop that R&D project. So this is a very simplified national science and technology planning procedure what we have done for the last year. This is a public R&D budget, what our government has allocated for the last years. Back in 2011, the budget was quite small, but if you see that graph, the blue color means R&D project, and the yellow, 잠깐, 저기 yellow가 아니지, blue, red지, red, 다시. So if you see that the graph, the blue means R&D budget, and the red means a general budget, and the special budget, the gray color represent the special budget. If you see that back in 2011, the budget was not high, but as our GDP has increased for the last years, and as a proportion of the GDP, our R&D budget has increased ever. So our government has never neglected to increase the R&D budget for the last 20 years. With that R&D, the research, budget, this government has leading, the two major, the government research institute. Two parts. The first part is the National Research Council of Science and Technology. Under the control of NSC, there are 25 institutes. They are all engineering research institutes. And a total researchers are 11,000, and a patents so far 6,055. This is all for electric engineering research institute. And meanwhile, the National Research Council for Economics and Humanities and Social Science. Because to keep the balance of ICT industry, not only engineering side research institute, but also social science and economic side research institute are needed. That's why Korean government has maintained a lot of social science research institute, around 26 institute. Compared to the engineering research institute, the NRC, the council, they have a smaller number, 5,596 researchers. So total, around 20,000 researchers are involved either in science and technology or socio-economic research activity. To keep the balance in the national development in our territory, recently Korean government has divided several parts as a regional the cluster. So Seoul is a capital of Korea. They have more complexity in the industry, which is a mixed fashion, IT, and software. Incheon is a suburb surrounded city to Seoul, and Gyeonggi is a surrounded province as well. They have very strengths in industry such as semiconductor, electronics, mechanics, and biotechnology also. So this is more focused the R&D activity in this area. And down here, the Gyeongnam area, which is the southern part of Korea, like in Iran, Shiraz or some other areas. They have their special the industry also, some machinery and mechatronics and automobile and shipbuilding. So the reason why our government has divided this regional cluster is to boost up their competitiveness and their capability to accelerate their own industries. From now on, I would like to share how Korean government ICT policy initiative has impacted the development of ICT industry in Korea. So this is a chronicle development and what our government has performed for the years. Back in 70s and 80s, that time was a technology acquisition from FDI, foreign direct investment, and early 1990s, there was early domestic R&D, and late 1990s, there was a program and a TTC initiative, and early 2000, holistic approach by TTC strategies, and since 2010, we are focusing on TTC policy aimed for global market. So this is the series of ICT policy executed by Korean government. First one was started from 1978 till 1987, and a computerization of a computerization of a public administration, and again, the national backbone network policy has continued based on their computerization of a public organization, and at 1996 till 2000, a national informatization integration, and more recently, 1999 and till 2002, the focus was Cyber Korea 21 and E-Korea and Broadband IT Korea and New Korea. And most recent policy is 2015 till 2020 is a KICT strategy. Let me go over each strategy, focus, and their target. First one, last year from 1999 till 2009, the vision was the construction of a creative, knowledge-based nation. So goal is increasing the share of knowledge-based industry in GDP up to the OECD countries by 2002. Because at the time, Korea was not a member of OECD. So from the point of a national, the perspective, one of our goal is to participate as a member of OECD countries. So the goal, the second, was becoming one of the top 10 advanced knowledge-based information society in the world by 2002. There was targeting to, by the completion of this Cyber 21, the goal was to achieve two things, OECD member and world #1, the knowledge-based information society. And basically, the strategy has implemented three sides. First one is establishing information structure, and the second is improving national productivity, and the third one was creating new business and facilitating ICT industries. Again, the 2002 till 2006, for the 5 years, from this period, government and a company, they started to share the role to vitalize the ICT industry in Korea. The government side, they are focusing on industry, introducing new services, building infrastructure and device part and content and industrialization. And in this big category, government has parted their role like the license carrier and a policy strategy, standardization, and support overseas entry. Those are the government major role. Meanwhile, companies, they had performed their job, like preparation of service launching and investment of technical deviation and commercialization, and more packaged software solution project. 2003 and 2007, again, the vision was a reinforce of a global competitiveness of IT. So total, the policy title was a broadband IT Korea policy. The goal was a construction of advanced knowledge information society and attain of national income per capita as high as 20,000. So at this stage, the first priority is to orchestrate the power of the ICT entities, like in strategy, innovative e-government, digital economy, and a broadband comprehensive network, and a foundation for economic growth for ICT. Again, 2006 till 2010, more specifically, we have set up more detailed ICT development plan, which is the U-Korea policy. The vision is advanced Korea. So the goal was realizing the world first U society. U society means ubiquitous society based on the world's best ubiquitous infrastructure. The strategy is more specified. First one is friendly government. Friendly government is connected with e-government, and intelligent land, which is to orchestrating most of the scattered industry competitiveness, and a regenerative economy, and a secure and a safe society environment, and a tailored ubiquitous life service. So that strategy and also balanced global leadership and ecological industrial infra and streaming social infra and a transparent technological infra was adopted as a strategy to implement this U-Korea policy. Smart Korea policy has lasted between 2010 till 2014. The vision was achieving digital creative Korea for citizens' happiness. From this period, most of government interest and a topic was to make people more happy and more comfortable. So goal was dedicated to achieve a dynamic economy, a good and worldly citizen life, and a digital environment allowing coexistence in trust. So in detail, strategies was summarized as a creative economy, optimized society via ICT, renewed human capacity, and enhanced ICT industries. This is a more recent, the ICT, the policy, which is called KICT strategy. Vision is realizing creative Korea led by ICT. So goal in more specifically 8% of growth in ICT industry and $210 billion in export and 240 trillion won in production. So the strategy has focused on improvement of fundamentals and expansion of ICT convergence and reinforce of global cooperation and first of a 9 strategy industry and a core competitiveness in leading industry. In detail, the strategy number 1, A1, is accelerating technology innovation and reforming R&D budget system, including fast track of a small and medium-sized enterprise and ICT research and development innovation cluster. Because we see the importance of ICT R&D activity to boost up our ICT industry. So first, the strategy is focused on how we could improve the efficiency of R&D activity. Second is nurturing creative talent. So from the school, we are trying to motivate. We are trying to give more motivation to the student to lead ICT industry for the next years. And third one is globalizing business startups and ventures. Although we have a lot of big and very competitive companies in ICT industry so far, but we try to develop more globalizing startups and ventures in ICT industries. So recurring the foreign investment are around $400 million by 2019. So those are some the activity integration of a project and a broad establishment and expanding opportunity to enter overseas market and the concentration of functions for supporting business startups. Second category B1 was focusing on global goal realizing convergence in 6 major areas. Like in the policy, they have divided 6 the areas like cities, education, energy, healthcare, and transportation. In each the sector, they have designed a very detailed how they could vitalize, how they could accelerate the improvement of the happiness and the comfortability of the people. And improving regulation on convergence because we are trying to develop more ICT-related industry, like convergence with ICT and biotechnology, and convergence with ICT based on agriculture based on ICT, and some other manufacturing industry based on ICT technology. So this is a big target, how we could improve regulation on convergence. And expanding also, public demand is also one of a big target, because a lot of we have received a lot of public demand, how they could ICT industry can orchestrate the public demand smoothly. So first one is ICT equipment, software, contract information in the public sector, and raise the credibility of a small and medium-sized ICT industry equipment is one of a big target of this the classification. And in global cooperation side, export customized to each region, and the export of a strategic product of packaging, and a successful hosting of Pyeongchang Olympic. Pyeongchang Olympic was done around the years, and then taking advantage of Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Game, we tried to boost up global cooperation opportunity. Software is one of the most important the part in ICT industry. So in this policy, software, the emphasis of software was a very important part also to implement this policy. First one is build a research hub for the 8 basic software areas, is in detail OS, operation system, and machine learning, and CPS, DBMS, UI, UX, distributed computing, algorithm, and intelligent software. Those are major 8 basic software area to raise up the competitiveness of software industry, and support the R&D for growing startup with venture capital investment. In IoT, we already have seen a lot of IoT industry everywhere. As a metaverse era, so we have we have started to boost up the IoT competitiveness a long time back, and establish a large scale of IoT public private complex in a health and a smart city, and pursue public the pilot project for each of the 7 strategies industry, like home appliance, manufacturing, auto, energy, health, sports, and tourism. Cloud is one of the essential the part in ICT industry at this moment. So we are trying to make a big balance by developing our cloud side, the industry, cloud side R&D, and the activities also. So we are trying to improve transformation of national service and the pursuit of application of cloud computing in industry complex, and improve one-stop service to the people and the company. Information society means we have created more information protection, because of complexity of ICT society, we have a more vulnerable the environment to be attacked our valuable asset. So we are trying to protect our national asset and a seasonal asset as by establishing a cyber security park. So 5G is another the big important area to boost up the ICT industry. So as you know, Korea is a 5G the industry at this moment. So our 5G strategy started 10 years ago. So this is a result of what we are seeing these days. And a UHD, ultra high definition the TV display, is one of our strategies to lead that competitiveness. And a smart device is one of very important the fact component in ICT industry. Like in smart device, our strategy is technology development on 10 major devices, like wearable and healthcare, and 10 core part like wireless recharging and human body communication. And digital content, which is the target is to establish the KICT content of a business center and focus on nurturing promising content and original technologies. As you know, we are trying to expand our culture to overseas, and this is one of a result of our effort, with this strategy and policy. And big data is also big issues in ICT industry, and the importance of a big data will be greater and greater in the next futures. So we have executed an advanced big data project and demonstrate a lot of projects to solve the urban issues by citizens and some personal information protection and the innovation of big data industries. So far, I have shared some technology. So far, I have shared some knowledge and experience of what we have done to develop our ICT industry. So if I summarize that the lessons we could share with Iranian organizations, first one can be strong and leadership with action-oriented policy. Second one can be streamlined policy and a legal framework, which is we have kept very consistent, streamlined policy for the years, and pursue innovation and end-user-centric priority, and a cooperation among organization and agency can be a major factor of the successful result. This is a very small the summarization that we could share from these lectures. So thank you very much for your listening. Thank you.